Have you ever seen a mother look her own daughter in the eye, at a black tie charity event surrounded by 500 people, and pretend she doesn't know her? Not a stranger. Not someone she'd forgotten. Her firstborn daughter, the one who spent 30 years showing up, giving money, swallowing every insult with a smile. Standing right there with a founding patron badge pinned to her chest while her mother whispered to the man beside her, "I've never seen that woman before in my life." That happened. 3 weeks after that same mother called to say her daughter wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because her job wasn't impressive enough. 3 weeks after she told her oldest child that her existence would be an embarrassment in front of company. And what none of them knew, not the mother, not the golden child little sister, not the rich fiancé they were all trying so hard to impress, was that the woman they threw away had been quietly sitting on a $12.8 million inheritance. The exact money they were all counting on. My name is Marlene Dunbar. I'm 54 years old. I'm a social worker in Hartford, Connecticut. And this is the story of how my family tried to erase me and ended up erasing themselves. But let me take you back. 3 weeks earlier. December 1st. A Sunday evening. That's when the phone rang. It was 6:19 in the evening. I remember because I'd just sat down with a cup of chamomile tea and a stack of case files I'd brought home from the office. I was reviewing a custody evaluation for a family where the mother had been keeping her kids from their father out of spite, using children as leverage. The irony of that wouldn't hit me until about 10 minutes later. My phone lit up. Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail. Helen Dunbar doesn't call on Sundays unless she needs something, and whatever she needed, I already knew it would cost me in ways that had nothing to do with money. I picked up anyway. Because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. "Marlene," she said, and I could hear it immediately, that particular tone she uses when she's already made a decision and is now performing the courtesy of informing you. "We need to talk about Christmas Eve." I set my tea down. In the Dunbar family, "we need to talk" is never a conversation. It's a sentencing. What about it? Well, a pause. The kind of pause that sounds like someone adjusting their grip on a knife before they slide it in gently. Jacqueline is bringing Graham to meet the family. You know how important this is for her. Graham Ashford. I'd been hearing that name for 4 months like it was a magic spell. Founder of Ashford Meridian Partners, a private equity firm managing somewhere north of $300 million. Jacqueline's ticket to the life she always believed the universe owed her. "That's wonderful," I said. I meant it. Despite everything, I wanted my sister to be happy. "I'll bring that spinach dip everyone likes." Another pause. Longer. "That's actually what I'm calling about. Jacqueline feels it might be better if you didn't come this year. I want you to understand something. When you've been the family disappointment for 3 decades, you develop a kind of radar for these moments. You feel them coming the way animals feel a storm. The air changes. Your chest tightens before your brain even registers the words. It's nothing against you personally," my mother continued. "It's just that Graham comes from a very particular world. Finance, investments, that sort of circle. And she paused as if searching for the right word, though we both knew she'd picked it out hours ago. "Your line of work might give the wrong impression." My line of work. As if I'd wandered into social work by accident. As if I hadn't put myself through graduate school at 41 while working full-time. As if 15 years of helping families in crisis was something to whisper about at dinner parties. "Mom. I have a master's degree. I'm a licensed clinical social worker." "Exactly." Her tone shifted like I'd just proven her point. 15 years and you're still making, what, 50-something thousand? 62. Not that the number mattered. It would always be the wrong number. Jacqueline is a marketing director now. She works with investors, high net worth individuals. She needs Graham to see that the Dunbar family fits into his world. I thought about last Christmas. The way my mother introduced me to her friend Carolyn from the Arts Council. "This is Marlene, my older daughter. She does social work." That pause. heavy and deliberate. Jacqueline, of course, is in corporate marketing. The shift in her voice from flat to proud had been so practiced it almost sounded natural. I thought about the check I'd written 3 months earlier for Jacqueline's engagement party. Since you don't have a family of your own to worry about, I'm sure you can chip in a little extra, my mother had said. $2,500 for flowers and the photographer. I sent it the same day without a word. Mom, I said carefully. What if I just came by for dessert? Said a quick hello to Graham and then left? Jacqueline was very clear, Marlene. She doesn't want you there at all. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Don't make this harder than it has to be. As if I was the one holding the knife. I looked around my living room. The 2-bedroom apartment in West Hartford I'd called home for 11 years. The couch I'd reupholstered myself from a YouTube tutorial. Bookshelves stuffed with psychology texts and case study journals. A kitchen where I packed my lunch every morning at 5:45 because eating out every day wasn't in the budget. This was the life that embarrassed them. I understand, I said. Those 2 words. I understand. I'd been saying them my whole life. I understand when she threw Jacqueline a surprise birthday party and forgot mine entirely. I understand when my promotion to senior caseworker went unmentioned at Thanksgiving while Jacqueline's new corner office got a 20-minute toast. I understand when I wasn't included in the family Christmas card photo because, quote, the photographer charges extra per person. I understand. The 2 most expensive words I ever learned to say. Good, my mother said, and I could hear the relief flooding her voice like a faucet turning on. I knew you'd be reasonable. You always are. We hung up. I sat there in the silence for a long time, watching the light from my reading lamp fall across those custody files. A mother using her children as weapons. My own mother using absence as one. Then I opened my laptop. There was a folder I hadn't touched in months. It was labeled simply Grandma Vivian. Inside was an email from an attorney named Lorraine Buckley. Subject line, Annual Trust Review, Vivian Dunbar Trust. I'd been avoiding it for weeks. I closed the laptop. But for the first time in a very long time, I didn't cry that night. Something else was happening instead. A kind of stillness. Like the air before a storm when even the birds go quiet. Monday morning I stood in front of my desk at the Department of Children and Families and did what I've done every workday for 15 years. I showed up. I listened. I helped people navigate the worst chapters of their lives. And underneath every conversation, every intake form, every phone call with a frightened parent, my mother's voice played on a loop. Your line of work might give the wrong impression. I counsel families who are falling apart. I sit across from women who've been told they're not enough, and I help them believe otherwise. And my own family had just told me I wasn't enough and I'd said, I understand. Tuesday evening my father texted. Sweetheart, I'm sorry about Christmas. Your mother knows best. I love you. Donald Dunbar, 67, retired insurance adjuster, lifetime spectator. He'd never once stepped between my mother and her decisions. Not when I was overlooked. Not when I was diminished. Not when I was made to feel like a stain on the family name. But he always said he loved me. As if love without action was anything more than a word on a screen. I didn't respond. Wednesday I worked late, then came home and heated up leftover soup. I sat at my kitchen table and thought about the upcoming holiday. Somewhere across town, my mother was probably polishing silver and planning the seating arrangement for a dinner table with no place set for me. Somewhere Jacqueline was choosing an outfit to impress a man who didn't even know I existed. Christmas Eve came. I worked a half day, then drove home through light snow. I cleaned the apartment. I graded nothing because I'm not a teacher, but I organized my case files for January like the compulsive planner I am. At 4 p.m, I cooked myself a small turkey breast from the grocery store, instant mashed potatoes, canned cranberry sauce. A Christmas Eve dinner for one, eaten standing at the counter because sitting at the table felt too formal for a party of nobody. At 7:52 that evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Jacqueline. A photo attached. Thanks for being cool about tonight, sis. Graham says our family is so classy. Love the energy. The photo showed all of them around my parents' dining table. The big mahogany one that used to be Grandma Vivian's. Helen at the head, beaming. Donald looking stiff but smiling. Jacqueline glowing in a cream-colored dress next to a tall man with dark hair and an expensive watch. Graham Ashford, I assumed. For place settings. No empty chair. They hadn't even pretended to miss me. I zoomed in. My mother was wearing the garnet earrings I'd given her for her 65th birthday. The ones she'd called sweet but simple. And there, on the buffet in the background, just barely visible, was Grandma Vivian's crystal punch bowl set. The one she'd promised to me specifically because I was the only grandchild who ever helped her set it out for holidays. My mother had kept it. Naturally. I called Denise. Denise Kowalski has been my closest friend for 12 years. We started at DCF the same month, survived the same impossible caseloads, and developed the kind of bond that only forms between two people who've seen too much and still show up the next morning. She's the only person on earth, outside of one attorney, who knows what my grandmother left behind. Tell me you're not sitting alone in that apartment, she said. I'm sitting alone in this apartment. Marlene. I told you to come over. My daughter made enough pierogi to feed the entire block. I know. I just needed to sit with it. Sit with what? Your family treating you like furniture? That's not new information, babe. When are you going to stop absorbing it and start doing something about it? I told her about the photo. The text. The 4 place settings. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. You have options, Marlene. You've had them for 2 years. Your grandmother didn't give you that responsibility because she thought you'd just sit on it forever. She gave it to you because she trusted you to use it when the time came. I don't want to use money as a weapon. Then don't. Use it as a mirror. Hold it up and make them see what they've been doing. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. The folder. Grandma Vivian. The email from Lorraine Buckley. The trust document I'd been avoiding like a bill I couldn't pay. My grandmother Vivian died 2.5 years ago at 87. She was the only person in my family who ever made me feel seen. When I went back to school for my master's at 41, she drove from Mystic to Hartford to take me to dinner and tell me she was proud. When I got my license, she mailed me a handwritten letter. When I told her I felt invisible at family gatherings, she held my hand and said, Marlene, you are not invisible. You're just standing in a room full of people who've forgotten how to look. I didn't know what she'd done for me until after she was gone. I clicked on the email. Dear Ms. Dunbar, as per our annual review, the Vivian Dunbar Irrevocable Trust currently holds assets valued at $12,816,411.77. As sole trustee, you have full discretionary authority over all distributions under Section 4.2 of the trust instrument. Please confirm your distribution intentions for the upcoming fiscal year by January 5. $12.8 million. Jacqueline was the sole beneficiary. And I was the sole trustee. The person who decided when, how, and whether that money ever reached her hands. My grandmother had made that choice on purpose. She told me near the end, Jacqueline isn't a bad person, Marlene. She just never had to earn anything. I need you to teach her. That's the only way she'll learn. I'd kept this secret for 2.5 years. I told no one except Denise. Not my parents. Not Jacqueline. Nobody. Because I didn't want my family's relationship with me to become about money. And because I wasn't ready for that kind of power. But now, sitting in my quiet apartment on Christmas Eve, exiled from my own family's table because my salary wasn't impressive enough for my sister's rich boyfriend, I started to wonder if it was finally time to stop keeping this secret. The day after Christmas I drove to New Haven. Lorraine Buckley's office was on Chapel Street in one of those old brick buildings that still smells like wood polish and importance. She'd been my grandmother's attorney for over 20 years, and she had the kind of steady, no-nonsense presence that made you feel like the world could be managed as long as someone competent was handling the paperwork. She poured me coffee in a ceramic mug and spread the trust documents across her desk like a map. "Let's go through it," she said. "Your grandmother established the Vivian Dunbar Irrevocable Trust in January of 2 years ago, roughly 10 months before she passed. Total current value, just under $12.9 million. Stocks, bonds, a rental property in Guilford. Jacqueline is the sole beneficiary. You are the sole trustee. And as trustee, I control everything." Lorraine tapped a highlighted paragraph. Section 4.2. She read it aloud. "The trustee shall have sole and absolute discretion to determine the timing, amount, and conditions of any distributions to the beneficiary." "That's about as broad as trustee authority gets," she said. "Your grandmother paid a lot of money to make sure that language was bulletproof. She wanted you to have complete control. Timing, conditions, amounts, everything." I asked what my options were. She pulled out a separate sheet. "You can authorize a standard annual distribution. Jacqueline is currently eligible for up to $175,000 per year. You can defer distribution entirely for up to 12 months. You can attach conditions, financial literacy courses, employment verification, personal benchmarks. Or you can restructure the schedule altogether. And if Jacqueline challenges it, she can petition the court. But unless you act in clear bad faith or violate fiduciary duty, your discretion is essentially untouchable." Lorraine leaned back. "Your grandmother made sure of that. She spent real money on these protections." I sat with that for a moment. Then Lorraine reached into a drawer and handed me an envelope. "There's something else. Separate from the trust, your grandmother left you a personal bequest. $40,000, unrestricted. You've been using it for charitable donations, correct? The New Haven Winter Arts Benefit. I've contributed for 2 years running." "Yes, I see those records." She slid the envelope across the desk. "This arrived last week. Your invitation for this year's event." I opened it. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, a badge on a silk ribbon. Marlene Dunbar, founding patron. The benefit was scheduled for Saturday, December 28th. The grand atrium at the Sterling Pavilion. Black tie, 400 guests from Connecticut's financial and philanthropic world. The same event Jacqueline and Graham were planning to attend as their big society debut. "I didn't realize the timing," I said quietly. Lorraine's face stayed perfectly neutral, but something moved behind her eyes. "Life has a way of arranging things, Ms. Dunbar." I looked at that badge for a long time. For 2 years I'd gone to this event quietly. Slipped in, made my donation, left before anyone asked questions. I didn't want my family to know. I didn't want this part of my life to become a talking point or a target. But they thought I was an embarrassment. Too low status to sit at their Christmas table, too ordinary to meet Graham Ashford. And in 3 days, I would walk into the same room they did, wearing a badge that no amount of their networking could buy. "I'd like to schedule a follow-up for Monday morning," I told Lorraine. "Before the fiscal deadline. I think I'll know what I want to do by then." She smiled. The first real one I'd seen from her all afternoon. "I think you will too, Ms. Dunbar." I drove back to Hartford with the badge in my purse and something unfamiliar sitting in my chest. It took me 20 miles to name it. It was permission. Permission to stop being small. I was home for less than 2 hours when the buzzer went off. 4:45 in the afternoon, the day after Christmas. I wasn't expecting a soul. Denise was visiting her daughter in Bridgeport. My social calendar, as usual, was a blank page. I looked through the peephole and my stomach turned over. Helen Dunbar stood in the hallway in her good wool coat, lips pressed together, flanked by Jacqueline and my father. Jacqueline's face was flushed the way it gets when she's furious and trying to look composed. Donald stood slightly behind them both, hands in his pockets, already looking like he wished he were somewhere else. I opened the door. My mother walked in without waiting to be invited. That was Helen. She entered rooms the way she entered conversations, as if permission was a formality that didn't apply to her. "We need to talk about Grandma Vivian's trust," she said. My heart kicked once, hard. They knew. "Graham's financial team," Jacqueline said, pushing in behind her. "Standard background review. His people found the trust filing." Imagine how I felt sitting across from my fiancé while his advisor explained that there's a $12.8 million trust in my name that I didn't even know about. She was breathing fast. And that my sister, my social worker sister making $62,000 a year, is the one controlling it. Donald came in last. Closed the door behind him. Said nothing. "You're the trustee." Jacqueline's voice rose. "You? Grandma put you in charge of something like this?" "She did." "That's insane." She jabbed a finger at me. "You don't know the first thing about managing that kind of money. You counsel people about food stamps and custody schedules. And you got your job because your boyfriend handed it to you. I don't think either of us should be throwing stones at the other's qualifications." That landed. I watched it hit. My mother stepped in, hands raised, shifting into the voice she uses when she wants something. The soft one. The one I'd heard 100 times before a request for money. "Thora, sweetheart, let's not fight. This is clearly a complicated situation, and I'm sure we can sort it out as a family." "My name is Marlene," I said flatly. "And no." She blinked. "I'm sorry." "No, you cannot sort this out. Grandma Vivian chose me. She was mentally competent, legally advised, and witnessed by 2 independent parties. The trust is ironclad." Jacqueline stepped forward, her jaw tight. "I'm the beneficiary. That money is mine. The money is yours when I say it's yours. That's how a trust works." My mother pulled a manila folder from her handbag. She'd come prepared. She always came prepared when she wanted control of something. "I've had our family attorney draft paperwork to transfer the trusteeship to me," she said. "It's the most sensible arrangement. I have experience. I understand finances. You understand control. That's not the same thing." The room went very still. "Marlene." Helen's diplomatic voice was gone now. "You are being unreasonable. This money is Jacqueline's future. Her wedding. Her security. Are you really going to stand in the way of your sister's happiness because of some petty grudge?" There it was. The playbook I'd seen my entire life. First the soft voice, then the guilt, then the accusation of selfishness. 3 decades and the script never changed. "I'm not standing in the way of anything," I said. "I'm doing exactly what Grandma Vivian asked me to do." "And what's that?" "Making sure the money goes to someone who's ready for it." Jacqueline made a sound like she'd been slapped. "I am ready for it." "Then you won't mind proving that." Before anyone could respond, I reached into my purse sitting on the hall table and pulled out the badge. Founding Patron. Gold lettering on ivory card stock. "I'll be at the Winter Arts Benefit on Saturday," I said. "If you want to continue this conversation, we can do it there." Jacqueline actually laughed. "You weren't invited to the benefit." I held up the badge. Founding Patron. I've donated $40,000 over 2 years. They send me a personal invitation every November. I have never in my life seen my mother's face do what it did in that moment. It was like watching someone try to solve a math problem that keeps changing the numbers. "That's not possible," she whispered. "The foundation has my records. You're welcome to check." Jacqueline grabbed the badge out of my hand, stared at it, turned it over as if looking for a seam, some proof it was fake. "Where did you get $40,000? "Grandma Vivian. She left me a personal bequest, separate from the trust. I've been honoring her memory with it." I took the badge back. Gently but firmly. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard in that apartment. 30 years of being the invisible daughter, the wrong career, the empty chair, and in 60 seconds I had rewritten every assumption they'd ever made about me. My mother spoke first. Strained. Measured. "We'll discuss this Saturday, then." "We will." She turned toward the door. Jacqueline shot me a look that could have curdled milk. Donald trailed behind them as always, but as he passed me, he stopped. "Marlene," he started. "Not now, Dad." He nodded once and left. I closed the door. Stood there listening to their footsteps disappear down the hallway. My hands were trembling. But it wasn't fear. It was something I hadn't felt in so long I barely recognized it. It was my own voice. And it was loud. Now I want to stop the story here for just a moment, because something important was happening in that hallway that I didn't fully understand until later, and I think it matters. For 30 years, my family had trained me to be the reasonable one. And I wore that label like it was a compliment. But here's what I finally realized. Being the reasonable one in a family like mine didn't mean I was wise. It meant I was safe. Safe for them. Because a reasonable person doesn't fight back. A reasonable person absorbs the insult, writes the check, stays home when she's told to, and never makes anyone uncomfortable by asking to be treated like she matters. That's not reason. That's obedience with a nicer name. And the other thing I started to see was how my mother used love like a reward system. When I did what she wanted, I was sweetheart. When I didn't, I was selfish. When I gave money, I was being a good sister. When I asked for a seat at the table, I was making things difficult. It was always conditional. Always performance-based. You only got warmth when you earned it, and the rules for earning it changed whenever she needed them to. My grandmother was the only person who ever loved me without a price tag attached. And I think that's why she trusted me with this, because she knew I understood the difference. And if you're new here, this is what we do on this channel. I take real stories from real people, shared on forums like Reddit, Quora, and other places with their permission. I change the names, the details, and I add some fiction to protect their privacy. But then I do something a little different. I break these stories down, not just for the drama, but for the why. Why do families do this? What are the patterns? How do we recognize them and protect ourselves? If that sounds like something you need in your life, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It takes 1 second and it means the world. Now let's get back to Marlene, because Saturday night is about to change everything. The New Haven Winter Arts Benefit filled the grand atrium of the Sterling Pavilion with 400 guests, crystal light, and the low confident hum of people who were used to being in rooms like this. Every chandelier was lit. Every champagne glass was full. The silent auction tables were lined with original art, luxury getaways, and a set of box seats to the Yale Bowl that probably cost more than my car. I arrived at 7:10 in the evening, wearing a simple black dress I'd found on sale for $180. It wasn't designer. It wasn't borrowed. It was mine and it fit. The badge pinned to my chest, Marlene Dunbar, founding patron, was the most expensive thing on my body, and it outweighed every piece of jewelry in the room. The VIP entrance was separate from the main doors. A young woman with a clipboard checked my name, smiled warmly, and walked me toward the reception area near the main stage. "Ms. Dunbar," she said. "Thank you so much for your continued support. The board asked me to personally express how much your generosity means to the organization." "Thank you. My grandmother believed deeply in what you do here. I'm just continuing what she started." I took a glass of champagne and moved into the crowd. For 2 years I'd attended this event like a ghost. Arriving late. Leaving early. Avoiding eye contact. Tonight I stood still. Tonight I let people see me. I spotted them at 7:34. Helen in a deep green gown. Donald tugging at his collar. Jacqueline luminous in silver silk next to a tall, square-jawed man with careful posture and an expensive haircut. Graham Ashford. They were working the room. Jacqueline's hand resting on Graham's arm, her smile calibrated, her laugh perfectly timed. My mother orbiting nearby, introducing herself to anyone who looked important. A family performing togetherness for an audience. They hadn't seen me yet. I stayed near the stage, talking with a board member about youth arts funding in underserved districts. It was a conversation that mattered to me, about work that mattered to me, and I let it anchor me while the rest of the room buzzed with social theater. At 7:51, Graham noticed the badge. I saw the exact moment. He was scanning the room, doing what people in finance do at events like this, identifying the major donors, the board members, the people worth knowing. His eyes swept past me, stopped, came back. Landed on the gold lettering on my chest. Founding Patron. He said something to Jacqueline. She glanced over. And I watched every drop of color leave her face. But Graham was already walking toward me, pulling Jacqueline gently along. He'd been trained for this. Major donors get acknowledged. It's instinct. Excuse me. He extended his hand. I'm Graham Ashford. I don't think we've been introduced, but I wanted to personally thank you for your commitment to the foundation. Your contributions have been remarkable. Up close, he was polished in the way wealthy men often are. Good skin, good teeth, good tailor. But his eyes were sharp, and his handshake was firm and genuine. Thank you, I said. I'm Marlene Dunbar. The name landed. I watched it register. The slight pause. The flicker of recognition. The quick glance at Jacqueline, then back at me. Dunbar, he repeated. As in Jacqueline's older sister. That's right. He turned to Jacqueline. You told me you didn't recognize the woman with the patron badge. I didn't, Jacqueline said. Her voice was thin. The lighting in here. I wasn't sure. The lighting. Graham's tone dropped several degrees. Your sister has donated tens of thousands of dollars to a foundation I've personally supported for years, and you didn't recognize her. People were starting to notice. Not because we were loud, but because body language at events like this is its own language, and ours was screaming. Helen appeared out of nowhere, her crisis radar fully engaged. Graham, darling, have you seen the silent auction? There's a gorgeous weekend in Newport. Mrs. Dunbar. Graham's voice stayed pleasant, but the warmth had drained out of it. I was just thanking your daughter for her extraordinary philanthropy. I didn't realize she'd been a founding patron for 2 years. Helen's smile locked in place like a mask that had been nailed on. Your daughter? Marlene? He gestured at me. She's apparently contributed more to this foundation than many of the VIP guests here combined. I didn't realize, Helen said, and for the first time in my life, I heard my mother's voice fail her. You didn't realize your own daughter was a major donor to an organization you attend every year. Graham tilted his head slightly. Interesting. Graham. Jacqueline grabbed his arm. This is family business. It's complicated. What's complicated? Your sister is standing right here with credentials that say she's been showing up for this cause for years. And 30 minutes ago, you told me you'd never seen her before. Then came the voice that changed the entire temperature of the room. Marlene. What a pleasure to see you here tonight. Lorraine Buckley appeared in a navy dress with her silver hair pinned in an elegant knot. She nodded to Graham with the easy familiarity of someone who moved in these circles professionally. Mr. Ashford. Always nice to see you. Then to me, I hope we're still confirmed for Monday morning. There's quite a bit to review regarding the annual trust assessment. Graham's gaze sharpened. Trust assessment? Lorraine smiled like a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. Ms. Dunbar is one of my most dedicated clients. She oversees a significant family trust with exceptional care. She turned to Helen. Your mother-in-law made a wonderful choice, Mrs. Dunbar. The Vivian Dunbar Trust is in very capable hands. The air around us went cold. Marlene manages the trust? Graham looked from me to Jacqueline. The trust you told me was being handled by the estate. Jacqueline opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. I think, I said quietly, that you two have some things to talk about. If you'll excuse me. I turned to go. But Graham's voice stopped me. Ms. Dunbar. Marlene. His expression had changed. The polished social mask had cracked, and underneath it was something human. Something honest. I apologize for whatever part one played in this situation, and for whatever has been happening in your family. You didn't know? No. But I'm beginning to. He looked at Jacqueline the way someone looks at a painting they just realized is a forgery. I walked to the bar. My hands were still. My breathing was even. For the first time in my entire life, I had stood in a room full of people my family worshipped, and they had been forced to see me. Not the version they invented. Not the disappointment. Not the empty chair. Me. The fallout moved fast. By Sunday morning, Graham told Jacqueline he needed space. By Monday, their engagement was on indefinite hold. Not cancelled, but frozen in a silence that said everything. Jacqueline's position at his firm became uncomfortable by midweek. She wasn't terminated. Graham was too careful for that. But she was encouraged, as they say in corporate language, to explore opportunities more aligned with her personal trajectory. She cleaned out her desk on December 31st. New Year's Eve. You can't make that kind of timing up. My mother's phone rang all week. Friends from her social circle, women from the Arts Council, neighbors who'd somehow heard the story through the grapevine that runs through every community where reputation matters more than truth. They called to offer support, which really meant they called to collect details. The founding patron's story had spread through that benefit like smoke through a building. Denise told me she heard two different versions of it at her hair salon. Something about a sister who got banned from Christmas and then showed up as a VIP at the biggest fundraiser of the year. The details changed depending on who told it. The ending was always the same. Monday morning, December 30th, I sat in Lorraine Buckley's office and signed the deferral documents. All distributions from the Vivian Dunbar Irrevocable Trust to beneficiary Jacqueline Dunbar would be suspended for 12 months pending successful completion of a certified personal financial management course from an accredited institution. It wasn't punishment. It was exactly the kind of condition trustees place on beneficiaries who haven't demonstrated readiness. Standard practice. Legally sound. And precisely what my grandmother would have wanted. For what it's worth, Lorraine said as she notarized the last page, your grandmother would have done this the same way. She wasn't interested in revenge. She was interested in growth. I hope Jacqueline sees it that way. Lorraine closed the folder. Time has a way of changing people's minds. There's one more thing. Graham Ashford's assistant called my office yesterday. He'd like to meet with you. No pressure. You're under no obligation. But he expressed genuine interest in understanding the full picture. I'll think about it. That afternoon, an email arrived from my father. It was long. 3 full pages, the most Donald Dunbar had written to anyone in probably 20 years. He apologized for decades of silence. He acknowledged that my mother's treatment of me had been wrong and that his failure to intervene made him just as responsible. He didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said he wanted to do better, if I'd let him. I read it 3 times and saved it in a folder called Family. Jacqueline's text came on January 2nd. Fine. I'll take your stupid course. But don't think for a second I'm going to thank you for this. I wrote back, I don't expect thanks. I expect effort. Good luck with the program. She didn't reply. But Lorraine confirmed her enrollment a week later. Introduction to Personal Financial Management at a community college in Stamford. 12 weeks starting January 20th. 3 weeks after the benefit, I hosted a small dinner at my apartment. Denise, 2 colleagues from DCF, Denise's daughter Anya, and my father. Just my father. Helen had called twice asking to be included. I said no both times. Not yet, Mom. I need more time. She didn't argue. That alone told me how much the ground had shifted. Donald showed up at 5:30 with a bottle of wine and an expression I can only describe as nervous hope. He'd never been to my apartment before. In 11 years, not once. "It's nice," he said, looking around at my bookshelves and photographs. "It's you, Marlene." "Thanks, Dad." Dinner was loud and imperfect and wonderful. Denise told stories from our first year at DCF that made everyone laugh until they wheezed. Anya argued with my colleague Paul about whether New Haven or Hartford had better pizza. My father mostly listened, but when he spoke, his words were thoughtful and kind. At one point, across the table, he caught my eye and mouthed the words "thank you." I nodded. We were both learning what this could look like. A relationship built on truth instead of silence. At 8:15, my phone buzzed. A text from Jacqueline. "Merry late Christmas, Marlene. I'm trying." I showed my father. He read it twice. "She means it," he said. "The course is harder than she expected, but she's showing up." "Good." He handed the phone back. "She asked me if you'd ever forgive her." I thought about that honestly. Forgiveness isn't the problem, Dad. Trust is. And trust takes time. He nodded slowly. "That's fair." I texted Jacqueline back 3 words. "I see that." Not warmth. Not absolution. But acknowledgement. A door left open just wide enough for someone willing to walk through it honestly. After everyone left that night, I sat by the window with the lamp off and the winter dark pressing against the glass. The last month had taught me things I should have learned a long time ago. That boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity. That refusing to accept mistreatment is not selfish, it is necessary. That you can love people deeply and still say no to the way they treat you. My grandmother understood all of that long before I did. She left me the tools and trusted me to find the courage to use them. "You are not powerless, Marlene," she told me once. "You never were." I didn't believe her then. I believe her now. I'm going to keep teaching, or rather, I'm going to keep doing the work I was called to do. Not because I couldn't do something flashier, but because it matters. Because every time I sit across from a woman who's been told she's not enough and I help her see that she is, I remember why I chose this life. My career was never the problem. The problem was a family that measured worth in dollar signs instead of impact. I emailed Graham Ashford's assistant that night. I'd meet him for coffee. Somewhere neutral. He deserved to understand what he was walking into, or choosing to walk away from. Whatever he decided, it would be built on truth. The last thing I did before bed was look at that Christmas Eve photo one more time. 4 smiling faces. No empty chair. I didn't delete it. I didn't need to. That photo wasn't my story anymore. It was a picture of a family that no longer existed, because I finally stopped pretending it was okay. If you've ever had to draw a line with someone you love, or if you're sitting there right now thinking about doing it, I want you to know something. You're not alone. And you're not wrong. Everything you hear on this channel comes from real people who shared their stories on public forums. I change the names, the places, the details. I add a little fiction to protect their privacy. But the heart of every story is real. And the reason I break them down is so we can all learn something. So the next time someone tries to make you feel small, you've got the language and the understanding to stand tall. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe. It's free and it helps more than you know. And if you haven't already, check out some of the other videos on this channel. I think you'll find something that speaks to you. Take care of yourself. You deserve it. And I'll see you in the next one.